Continuiamo la nostra prima
So
sessione
let's continue
con
with our first session,
la sessione del pomeriggio.
with the afternoon
Bentrovate,
session.
bentrovati
So
a
welcome
tutti.
back.
Chiediamo di salire sul palco alla
We would like to
presidente di
invite
questa
on the
sessione,
stage
professoressa
here
Pina del Core,
Professor
della
del
Pontificia
Core
Facoltà di Scienze
of the
dell'Educazione
Pontifical
Auxilium,
Education
e al
of
moderatore Michal
Pontifical
Vojtáš
University of
dell'Università
Educational
Pontificia
Sciences,
Salesiana.
Auxilium, and the Salesian University. Vedi? Good afternoon.
Buon pomeriggio
Good afternoon.
a tutti e a tutte.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Ecco, riprendiamo
So
il
let's
percorso
start
iniziato questa mattina.
again the works that we have started in the morning.
150 anni di vita, egregiamente
150
delineata negli
years
interventi di questa mattina,
of life outlined in a wonderful way in this morning's interventions.
interrogarsi
Now, it's
sull'educazione,
obvious that we have to
sulla
ask
missione
ourselves
educativa dei figli di
which
Maria Ausiliatrice
kind of education and which is the mission
presente e soprattutto
we have seen in the life of the FAMA.
Guardare al passato, abbiamo visto,
Looking
è
back
un
to the
passo
past
ineludibile di ogni
is
memoria.
something we cannot avoid
Però
in
questo
any
consente
field,
di
and
interpretare il
this
presente
allows to
con
interpret
le
the
sue
present
istanze ed emergenze,
with its
ma
instances and
rilancia
emergencies,
necessariamente
while
verso il futuro.
relaunching every one of
Nei
us
momenti di
towards
maggiore
our
crisi e
future.
incertezza,
In the
infatti,
toughest moment
la
of
tendenza
crisis
dell'essere
and
umano è
uncertainty,
quella di guardare alle proprie
human being
spalle
looks
per
back
ritrovare nel
at the
passato
past
una
in order
bussola
to find
in grado di orientarlo
a
nel
way
presente e verso
out
il futuro.
and a way for solving its problems,
L'educazione, del resto,
and go on in the
richiama
present
il
towards the
futuro,
future.
riguarda il
Education
futuro.
recalls the future. It
E chi si occupa di
deals with the
educazione
future
e
and
di
will have
formazione,
works
soprattutto
in the
dei
educational
giovani,
and the formation
non può non
field,
interrogarsi sul
mainly of
futuro.
the youth, has
Non può
to
non cogliere
face
l'accorato
this
appello di
issue,
Papa Francesco ai
has
giovani.
to collect
Non lasciatevi
the
rubare
call
il futuro.
of Pope Francis.
Educare,
Don't
far
let someone
crescere,
steal your future.
far maturare
Educating,
è agire,
helping people to grow,
ma non c'è agire senza
is
una
equal to
direzione,
take an
senza una
action, a concrete
progettualità,
action, but
un
we need
orientamento al
a clear
futuro.
plan, a clear
Allora la domanda di
orientation
fondo
towards the future. So
che ci stiamo
the main
ponendo
question
è
we have to
dove
ask
stiamo
ourselves
andando?
is, where are we going to?
L'educazione e la cultura,
Education and
in un mondo
culture
divenuto sempre più
in a
complesso,
increasingly
hanno ancora
complex
senso?
world have
Quali
still a
futuri si
meaning,
aprono
a sense,
dinanzi agli
which
attuali
is the
scenari
future
socioculturali, politici,
before us,
economici,
considering
tecnologici,
the current social,
continuamente
cultural,
mutevoli e
political,
imprevedibili?
economic and technological
La
scenarios,
trasformazione
which are
antropologica, soprattutto, che stiamo
changing
attraversando,
continuously.
ci
Anthropological
mostra
transformation we are
l'urgenza di
facing
ripensare
show us
l'educazione e la
the
formazione,
need to rethink education and
sottolineando,
formation
e qui
while
questo non
underlining,
possiamo non dircelo,
and we have to say that bluntly,
sottolineando
underlining
l'inadeguatezza
the
delle scuole,
improper
dell'università
preparation of
e delle
schools,
istituzioni
universities,
formative
and
nell'affrontare la complessità.
educational institutions in
Una
facing
complessità che ha dei
this
processi sociali e
complex
culturali che
issue
sono sempre più
with
legati,
social and cultural
connessi,
processes which are
indeterminati. C'è una
interconnected
interdipendenza, una
among themselves,
interconnessione che
a
non
kind of
sempre riusciamo ad
interconnection
affrontare.
that we have
Quindi ci siamo chiesti anche
to
questa
face.
mattina,
So also in
siamo
the morning
preparati
we asked ourselves, are we ready for
siamo
the
preparati alla non
uncertainty of the future?
linearità
Are we
di questi
ready
processi?
for these
Soprattutto
changing
siamo preparati ad affrontare le
processes?
sfide
Are we
della
ready
politica,
to
di questo
face
scenario
the
anche
challenges
geopolitico
of this
che sta
geopolitical
cambiando,
scenario, which is
che diventa
continuously
sempre più
changing and which is
complicato?
continuously becoming harder and harder?
Ecco, in una
Well,
fase della civiltà
in
come
such
quella
a
che stiamo
complicated
vivendo, ricca di
stage of
risorse, di opportunità,
civilization,
certamente, ma anche
full of
attraversata
opportunity,
da
of course, but
rilevanti
also on the
cambi
other hand,
paradigmi che
crossed
sembrano
by
irreversibili,
grace and irreversible
educare al
changes.
futuro,
Educating to the
è
future
ancora possibile?
is still
È un
possible,
compito certamente
It's a
arduo
very
e
hard
difficile,
task,
carico di sfide,
full of
ma
challenges.
pensando
But
che a 150 anni
thinking
fa
that 150 years ago, our institute, in its poverty, with limited resources, for our institute, it was not very easy for our earlier sisters to design educational models and methods, mostly for the poorest youths and for the women. And if it was not easy for them, it will not be easy for us to reshape, redesign educational information paths, trying to also explore new alternatives, new trends, finding out, for example, new thoughts, new dimensions of the thought, of imagination, in a continuously changing and uncertain context. If we think of a future generation, we realize how most of our kids, our youth, will be projected in a future, in a future work, in an employment which still doesn't exist, or we can't even imagine as of now. Also considering that the world of work is changing a lot and very fastly. So we have to prepare these people for the future work, but since everything is quickly changing, the skills acquired are already obsolete and old-fashioned and unable to let them face the challenges ahead. So in the morning, talking about the history and the need to prepare people ready to face the challenges ahead, so being properly trained to offer the proper tools to the youth, we immediately understood that it's not just about educating some people, but first of all, restoring in the Institute a kind of mentality, a kind of culture which is able to not just to act, but also checking the way of acting, planning actions that can be projected in the future. So it will be very interesting to understand the work that we will do in this afternoon of talks. So listening to the past, looking ahead, but also, first of all, with our look ahead. The Chardin said that the past revealed the structure of the future. This is why we have to say that the contributions that we will listen to will allow us to grab the structure of the new paths of research and study looming ahead in order to understand once again education. We will listen to Sister Farina's intervention and speech to grab the new growth demands in among the youth, despite all the critical issues involving education and other prophetic instances which will be worded in the preventive system talks of Sister Kamila in the afternoon, but also trying to grab the method indications presented in the pedagogy which was elaborated by Salesian women, educating women within the FMA, that we will also see in the afternoon, of course. In the afternoon, we will also listen to many questions, like in the morning. Of course, we will also see some aspects of the reality that have to be reinterpreted continuously. So a careful way of listening to the different contributions will allow us to understand fully, in a clear way, the situation and start a concrete debate here in this assembly or in the workshops that will follow in the next few days. So thank you so much.
On the work of this working session of this morning, we have seen many figures, the trends at the global and historical level. Now we will dwell upon some phases and educational paths. Only 6 profiles will be introduced, and over 20 are available online as the survey. As FMA, creative interpreters of preventive system, thanks to the commitment of the other FMA in other parts of the world, we want to highlight the commitment, educational commitment of FMA, and keep into account that there are several kinds of works, periods and contests. These figures are not very much known, but we aim at grasp the charisma in the daily situation and in the dynamism of the educational needs. After this short biographical profile, we will have some questions in order to try to avoid the praising of spiritual kind, but will be more general the approach we have, and we will grasp some specific traits of the Salesian educational missions that are in the religious. The questionnaires are, for which reason is remembered these FMA person? Which is the impact that can be traced and she left behind, leaving in the world and in the environment as educators, religious educators, to which needs and unexpected challenges she was able to give an innovative response, preventive innovative response. What obstacles she met, she encountered, and which resources she was able, thanks to her entrepreneurship, developed. Which aspect of the preventive system she was able to develop in a very blatant way.
Rosa, Vera, educadora creativa. Nació en Huancay, Perú, el 12 de febrero de 1928.
1928. She was the second of three siblings, and Rosa was saying, I learned from my parents to help the poorest, the needy ones, and I learned how to defend them at every cost. She studied at native land, and she has been studying in Cusco, where she learned, she met the FMA, and she met all the sisters that helped to support the Virgin Mary.
In 1944, she entered as a member of the Lima Magdalena group, where she arrived with her parents and her older brother, Frank. She has taken the vows in February 1948, and she dedicated herself completely to that mission, which was entrusted to her during all her lifetime. She became educator, and she became professor at the high school in mathematics, chemics, and biology. Afterwards, she took a degree as a nursery. In the house of Huanta Huancayo, Cusco, Puno, and Lima Bregna, of Maria Auxiliatrice e Lima Bregna Santa Rosa, counted on her and her support. She worked as a primary and secondary school teacher and as a counselor at the oratories also. She had a strong faith. She was creative. She was always attentive and careful towards the poorest ones. In 1968, when she was in Puma working in the Scuola Normale, Peru was hit by a strong state turmoil with the communist regime taking the reins of the country, and a kind of period of reforms started empowering the country strongly. This reform failed due to the repression policy of the government, and one of the consequences was the closing of the private schools. All the sisters had to leave Puna in 1974, and so Rosa arrived in Lima, in the house of Lima. The building was empty following the closing of the Scuola Normale of Lima, and the principal gave her the task, along with Sister Yolanda Rivera, the charge of starting a study of what to do with this great building. Both proposed to bet on the extraordinary professional qualification, which was the level corresponding to the age between 16 years old onwards. So they found out during the Brenya studies that 70% of the population economically active needed to work, but their methods were very rudimental ones. Of course, they aimed at helping poor women, uneducated poor women, while improving the quality of work through improving a lot of aspects. So they planned a series of courses to teach to these women. So they drafted a strategic plan in a kind of tailoring courses, bakery courses, courses for becoming secretaries, nurseries, educational auxiliaries, and other kind of work and employments. So in 1975, along with Suor Rosa being the manager, they opened the first non-governmental educational center. So it was a kind of agreement with the state, and they, the two sisters, worked together for the promotion of entrepreneurial women. The congregation offered the building to these professors of the previous existing Scuola Normale and other teachers who joined the institution. Of course, it was a free contribution. Then they were paid partially, so sometimes. So then they were mainly focused on the formation, on the training of these poor women in order to let them gain academic qualification. Thus began a kind of familiarity and solidarity climate was really created to these specialties. Also, religious training was added together with a kind of psychological assistance and legal advice. The results immediately arrived. The work conditions improved, the economy improved, and also family life and the standard of living of Christian community improved. This was because they perfectly interpreted the law on education. Since 1989, it was renamed Occupational Educational Center, the CEO. Since 2008, it was called Technical Productive Center, teaching open modules to young, poor women and men in general. In 1977, while she still was a director of the CEO, obedience let her take new services in the time of crisis, supported by the Archbishop of Lima, Landazuri Enriquez, and appointed Secretary of the Caritas of Lima, where she's been working for 15 years, creating a great team of highly committed people, priests, religious lay people, and young students of the university from the social services, also creating important networks of collaboration. Thus, she made the hopes of tens of thousands of poor families become true. She created the first popular canteen. So, also other women opted to join her in her work, and Sister Rosa chose to collaborate with these women, also thus facing new and new challenges while distributing more and more food to the poorest ones in her center. Thanks to the help of God and the organization of Caritas, she managed in doing so. So she got funds to buy kitchens, pots and utensils, and she was also able to manage credits and manage the relationships with the works. She also involved other small workers, shoe shiners, newspapers vendors. She created a kind of canteen offering and a place for these people, for offering them the possibility to study and help poor kids coming from poor families and difficult situations. 80% of these children who left their home, were able to finally go back home. So now these kids are now adults, professionals, merchants, workers, good Christians and good citizens. She also worked with people with disabilities, homeless, elderly people, helping them to overcome their difficulties in a familiar environment. She had 200 employees, 160 social workers, administrative, and employees with whom they not just offered food, but also held Christian and human training courses, teaching not to be violent and to respect themselves much more. In 1992, she received another charge to tackle with, to manage the Casa Hogar del Niño en Chorrillos, a house for children at risk. So Sister Rosa had to face the most difficult challenge. Her younger brother was seized and killed by the Tupac Maros, the terrorist command. And this great pain did not stop her at all. On the opposite, it gave her a great lesson of forgiveness. So she kept on giving the best of herself to the work without leaving the CEO, director of Bregna, in this house for children. She welcomed a lot of children living in poor areas and also at risk. She involved not just kids in the school age, of course, thus offering them further lessons and integral assistance for the study, but also religious kind of formation and a personalized assistance to the kids and their families. It was a real Salesian family and a reality. So Sister Rosa had the joy of grabbing the fruits of this great work, seeing the growth of great professionals, good workers, merchants, meaning good Christians and honest citizens, as all these people they are now. So when she had to leave, when they had to leave the house, all these kids were grown and they had to leave the house, they kept on growing according to these values. She had a great ability in committing all the others in good activities. She was supported by her former pupils, social workers, professors, and public personalities, and also other students of the Casa Hogar of Jarina and of the CEO of Bregna. She considered community life as a great strength. Indeed, she was trying to be always precise with her sisters, and she was always sharing her experience with the others. Her health was always precarious, and she was almost suffering for all the time of her lifetime. I mean, a situation that accompanied her almost every year of her life, let's say. However, she had a great spiritual strength. She kept on exercising work till she retired when she was 78. As her forces were declining, she continued to search new ways to keep on helping those most in need. Even when she was limited, sitting on a wheelchair, her social work was acknowledged by many, a decoration of the Congress of the Republic, the Divina Maestra Award by the Consortium of Catholic Schools, and the Minerva Award for the entrepreneurial woman from the municipality of Lima, along with other recognitions for her 40 years, uninterrupted years as an educator for the municipalities of Lima and Bregna. School was also entitled and now has her name, the Educational Institution School, Sister Rosa Ballón in Lima. Sister Rosita's life was full of works, gestures, events, happenings where love and pain were many times interconnected, and from where we can always draw a teaching, as she also wrote properly regarding her work. She lived fully in faith, mercy, and apostolate. She was always hoping to pass through the holy door of the Jubilee. But God had decided something else for her, so her destiny was different. So on June 2016, she said the last yes to the good Father with a great peace in her soul. So thank you, Rosita. Thank you so much.
Adesso diamo benvenuto a Suor Kamila Novosedliková, che ci presenterà il profilo di Suor Mária Černá.
Non lo sentiamo.
Sarà, penso, comunque dal video, no? Sì.
Ok. Grazie. Hai visto che?
Grazie a te.
Mária Černá is one of the pillars of the recent development of FMA Institute in Slovakia. She's one of the pillars of the development of the FMA Institute in Slovakia. She's a figure who has resisted by keeping the Salesian spirit as a fire under the ashes during the persecutions by the communist regime and favoring the resumption of vocations. She substantially contributed to the revival of the FMA Institute in Slovakia as a formator in the very period when religious religious orders could not officially exist. Slovakia has entirely, during the 20th century, was part of Czechoslovakia. In 1938, the Communist Party won the elections. In 1950, the communist regime violently abolished all religious communities in Czechoslovakia. And the short period of political freedom in 1968 was severely repressed due to the invasion of Soviet troops. And from 1970 began a period of harsh political normalization that lasts until the fall of the communism in 1989. Maria Černá was born on 12 January 1928 as a Botice in a poor family. She was the third of 7 siblings, and she had been educated in an environment marked by a rigorous Jansenist spirit. Maria was in the Ertedate Institute. In 1943, it painfully recalls a period of novitiate. Following the style, she reached perfection through humiliation. Personal ability were a danger to achieve the religious perfection. So a novice with a teacher degree was extremely talented for music, and in order not to have the Synod Prize, was destined for the care of pigs. So the precious singularity of St. Mary was expressed from the fact that while the required job would humiliate whoever else endowed with such intelligence, she was able to get in the inner self, in the offering, exploiting in time she spent with God and listening this voice, inner guidance. So she made her first job in 1950, in August 1950. This was a novitiate of Nitra, when about 1,000 religious and 400 nuns lived in Slovakia. The concentration of the nun in the chosen monastery and systematic sending to the labor camps for working in agriculture and the industry began on August 29 of the same year. In Slovakia, there were 15 centralized monasteries, were also overcrowded. Hygienic conditions were unsuitable. Also, great financial benefits were promised to those sisters who would leave the order, but St. Mary, together with a sister, continued the way of the cross for 18 years in 12 different forced labor camps scattered throughout Czechoslovakia. She was in contact with, the contact with young people was strictly prohibited. New vocation could not be neither accepted nor formed. The youngest Salesians had the opportunity to they left the labor camps, but after 1 year, the so-called normalization started on behalf of the Communist Party, who impede nuns to live in the religious community, and every kind of formation was considered a crime. In 1968, she became inspector of the provincial of Salesian, and the Andrei Dermek, who had just been released from the prison. So So, in order to explain the situation to her superior, Suor Maria had the opportunity to participate in the general chapter in 1960, and she personally talked to Ercilia Cantà, who informed her about the situation in the country. The mother gave her permission to start her novitiate, despite the conditions in the communism. In 1971, Suor Maria was assigned to serve in the parish house of Dubnica, where John Frederick Joseph Chaknek was a Salesian parish priest, who became one of the greatest benefactors. This change was for Mary very difficult. She was ought to wear a civilian dress, and therefore instead of a veil she wore a scarf, and she got used to be called lady. In 1968, the Polish provincial made the announcement to Suor Maria of her appointment as master of the novices. The young women who wanted to become FMA began to visit her, and for 14 years the parish house became a place of formation for novices. A specific formation for because the novices had informational meetings with the teacher only during the week, only in the weekends every 2 weeks. So Maria, in addition to her duties, devoted herself to the secret formation of the novices. She spent the nights translating the training lessons from Italian, and during the meetings she managed the whole program. She tried also to create a familiar environment for the novices. Although priests were present, the soul and the heart of these meeting was embodied by Suor Maria. These activities were extremely dangerous because at that time all religious events were monitored by the secret police. Religious formation was understood as activities against the state. Secret masses were celebrated under the threat of imprisonment. How do the novices see themselves during the clandestinity? There were no regular communities. 3 or 4 novices formed a group living together in private apartments. They were employed in civilian services, and she had been working 8 hours per day, and in the evening they had secret meetings with small groups of young people living in the families, preparing them for the sacraments. St. Mary guided the novices toward the depth of the interior life, through love exercised in a patient and incessant way, thus transmitting to them her creed. All was done with love and not by force. She appreciated the choice to leave the novitiate in such a risky way, and she knew that the parents of the novices had not to know nothing about their secret religious life. So in addition to the external obstacles, St. Mary suffered the pressure of some Salesians who had different opinions on some aspect of formation, and also on the way of living a religious life in hiding. Some of them pushed towards a kind of machism, rigorism, and their rigid opinions against regarding the apostolic life of the sister as well as the attachment to the person deviated from the spirituality led by the daughters. In this situation, Mary should have had a certain degree of diplomacy, strength and firmness. Some Salesians from the 50s who reached the extreme level because they probably believe that extreme situations required extreme solutions. They got to a conception of God in which their relation with man, the evangelical radicalism, pressed the person. She would have to sacrifice herself completely and annihilate herself completely. Intuitively, she perceived that the evangelical spirit consists in radicality of the God's gift, and God is the one who gives everything. So Maria had been educated in the rigorous spirit, but she managed to maintain a different approach. Only in this way we can explain why she was able to protect the novices from the rigid moralism. She suffered in silence hardships, sacrifices, and at the same time the persistent risk of persecution as well as imprisonment by the secret police. In the city of Dubnica, there was a secret agent who sent information about them to the secret police, and at the time of totalitarianism, the most serious burden for religion was not to be employed working in labor force, but rather living the inner struggle of how to move forward, how to continue to live their vows, and to what extent they could take the risk. And on this issue, there were conflicting opinions among the Salesians as well. Indeed, all these hardships strengthened her character. She was a consecrated woman who, despite the harsh blows received from the civil and ecclesiastical authorities, she remained faithful to the Church, to God, and to the Institute, transforming her personal suffering into understanding for those entrusted to her. So Mária Černá, together with Vilma Šutkova, were in contact for almost 20 years with the young women who were formed by them. At the end of the totalitarianism, the two formators handed over to the Church a group of 40 young FMAs. We had never seen Maria in carrying out her normal Salesian activities, such as the oratory. Only 1 year she was able to be a catechism. She spent the rest of her life as a parish cook, and the outer structure of the Institute in Slovakia could not exist, but there was the spiritual strength of San Maria, her roots in the faith, in the charisma that was lived together with other sisters. So such strength enabled her to overcome great hardships. In addition, she has protected the autonomy of the Salesians with whom she had to work with. This required firmness and attention from Maria, so she tried briefly to present Mária Černá as a spiritual guide who she never felt up to her role of teacher. She managed to direct the novices towards a religion vocation in a loving way. She was animated by a modern religiosity, capable of overcoming contradictory circumstances, and she lived her faith as a vocation for the perfection of love. As a teacher, she was able to transfer to the young FMA the love that set the novice free, because she herself had experienced the divine love that fulfilled her and gave her strength. As Maria herself writes in her diary, despite all my weaknesses, I sincerely loved every novice. This is the heroism of a woman who, despite being humiliated, did not humiliate anyone. She was respectful of the person, raised the humiliated, and gave hope, nourished by a strong faith. She achieved victory by putting her personality of the novice first, making her feel the loyalty of her heart, her love and protection. That is why everybody remembers her as their mother. With courage, she raised her head to act freely, following the voice of her heart. In the concentration camp, he represented the David heroism against the communist power of Goliath.
Vorrei dire solo una frase. Io sono stata fortunata di essere la sua novizia.
Because I was one of the novices. Thank you.
Grazie per la presentazione.
Thank you for your presentation.
E adesso diamo un benvenuto a Suor Lauretta Valente, che ci presenta la figura di Suor Anita Della Ricca.
The personality of Sister Anita Della Ricca. Please.
Ecco, presento un breve scritto. Non si sente. Pronto?
Can you hear me?
Ecco.
Okay, here we are. Okay.
Grazie.
Thank you.
Ho preparato un breve scritto, non ci sono immagini perché non ci sono foto,
I have no
tante foto
images. There are not so many photos of Sister Anita, only a few, and maybe you will see a few of them, one or two maybe. Whatever we were able to collect will be therefore given to Sister Grazia Loparco to complete the documents. Sister Anita Della Ricca was born in 1911 in Alessandria and she died in Rome in 1994.
È vissuta in un tempo storico dei più complessi per l'Italia e non solo per l'Italia, ma per l'Europa e per il mondo intero. Ha attraversato le 2 guerre mondiali. È stata capace di entrarci dentro la storia con una speciale comprensione del carisma e del servizio. Veniva da una famiglia attenta alle situazioni politiche. Suo padre ricopriva ruoli di militare. Questo le ha dato probabilmente la capacità di misurare le situazioni storiche difficili, prevederne le soluzioni educative e di aiuto e affrontarle con determinatezza e convinzione. Lei fu convittrice dopo la sua professione, che è stata a Alessandria. Lei ha fatto la sua scuola dalle nostre suore in via Gagliaudo e
school at
vicino
our
c'era
nuns in Gagliano,
la
and
scuola
nearby there was
per
the
il perito
school
tecnico
for
commerciale. Quindi
technical
lei ha fatto
technicians,
il
commercial
suo
technicians
periodo di
school. So
convittrice mentre andava a formarsi nella scuola di
studied there
Stato.
while studying
La
also
sua
at the state
capacità
school.
di comprendere
Her ability to
problematiche di questo
understand
tipo le è
problems
stata
of this
molto
kind
utile.
really helped her
Dopo la sua
in a religious
professione
career. After
avvenuta
her
nel
profession in
1930,
1930,
fu presente a Valle Crosia
she
e
was
a Genova
she was in Valle Crosia and later
per
on
le
in
opere
Genova
per le opere in particolare del
works
popolo, ma anche per
of the
l'insegnamento
people, but
delle
also for the
scienze e
teaching,
della
for teaching
matematica, perché in
sciences and
quel
mathematics,
periodo
because in that period
c'era molta carenza di insegnanti
there were
e
not
quindi il
so many
Ministero del Lavoro
teachers,
ha
so the
conferito
Labour
a lei la
Ministry
possibilità di insegnare
conferred on
scienze e
her the possibility of
matematica,
teaching
ma
sciences and
comunque il
mathematics,
suo
but
diploma allora aveva un grande valore.
diploma was extremely valuable at
In
that
questi
time.
primi
So
incarichi che
in
le
these
furono affidati
first
emersero
tasks that
le sue capacità
she
organizzative
proved
e
her
di
greater organizational
intraprendenza. Riuscì in
organizational
breve a
skills. In a short
ripopolare
time, she was
significativamente le
able
due opere a cui fu chiamata,
to
per cui fu ricordata a
rekindle the
lungo.
works she
Una
joined.
personalità, quella sua
She had a great
riservata, sì, ma
personality,
attenta
but
alla
very
qualità delle
reserved also,
persone,
very
alla
careful
loro
about the
valorizzazione,
quality and the
all'investimento delle
valorization
loro
and enhancement
capacità.
of each and every
Era
single
anche
person
attenta ai
and also
bisogni
their skills.
particolari della
She was
vita
very
e delle
focused on the
famiglie,
needs of
sia delle
families,
giovani che delle loro
of the
assistenti. Io
youth,
sono
and
testimone di
the
questo. Nel
assistants. The assistants,
1956
I'm a
le
testimony of this.
superiori
In
la chiamarono a Roma per
1956, the
collaborare con i
superiors called her
salesiani
in Rome to collaborate
alla
with the Salesians
realizzazione del
on the
progetto nazionale per
project,
la
on the national
formazione
project for
professionale dei giovani e delle
for
giovani.
vocational
Un
training of the
impegno
youth,
questo richiesto dalle
a kind of
istituzioni
commitment which
democratiche
was
in via di
requested by the democratic
organizzazione e di
organizations which were
configurazione
setting
nella
up
Repubblica del nostro
in the
Paese dopo
Italian
la
Republic
caduta della monarchia.
after the monarchy.
Tale impegno ha richiesto
This
tutta la sua
commitment
competenza, dedizione,
required all
perspicacia
her
e doti personali
promptness
di
and
capacità
all her
relazionali. Il
skills.
resto della sua vita è stata totalmente
All
dedica
the
a
rest of her
questa particolare
lifetime was
missione.
dedicated to
Con i
this great
salesiani è stata
mission. With the
promotrice del
Salesian,
carisma
she
di Don
promoted the
Bosco
charisma of
nella sua
Don
formula
Bosco
integrale che è
in
stata
the
richiamata.
integral
I
formula,
valori cristiani, valori di
recalling
cittadinanza,
Christian
buoni cristiani, onesti
values,
cittadini. La storia dell'istruzione
reminding
e
that we have to
formazione
be
professionale
honest
in Italia
citizens.
che Sor Anita ha raccolto
in
insieme ai
Italy
salesiani
that
ha
she carried
origini
out
lontane
at that
dalla
time
cosiddetta legge
has
Casati
ancient
nel
roots
1850, quando
dating back to
allora
the legge
l'Italia non era
Casati when
unificata.
in
Dopo l'unificazione
1850 Italy was not even unified. After the unification of Italy,
questa normativa
this
a
rule
tutto il
was
paese.
transferred to
La
the whole
formazione
country,
professionale
and vocational
ha
training
percorso lunghi periodi
has
di
experienced
mutamenti,
the long
periodi di
periods of
mutamenti, fino ad
changes,
arrivare diverse configurazioni, fino ad arrivare all'attuale
reaching the
organizzazione
current regional organization and
quadriennale
setting
per il
for
conseguimento
year
di
planning
qualifiche
for
e diplomi
achieving qualifications
professionali
and
in
professional
stretta relazione
titles
con lo
which are
sviluppo
interconnected
economico e
with the economic
imprenditoriale
and
sia del
entrepreneurial
paese
development
che del
of both the
territorio
country
dove queste
and the
attività
territory where these
venivano svolte.
activities were carried out.
In un'epoca immediatamente al
period
secondo conflitto mondiale
following
occorreva
the Second World War,
contribuire alla
it was necessary to
ricostruzione del
contribute to the
paese,
reconstruction of
delle
the country,
persone,
the
del
people,
futuro
and the
dei
future
giovani
of the
e
youth,
delle giovani in
and
particolare.
also of young ladies in
In questo
particular.
impegno
So
e la
in this
presenza
great
degli
commitment
istituti
to the
religiosi
presence of
allora
religious
era una
institutes
presenza
was
importante per questo
extremely
aspetto formativo e
important as to this
indispensabile.
educational
Questa urgenza fu
aspect. It was
fatta propria
necessary. This
dai due
urgency was
istituti
made
salesiani.
clear by the two Salesian
Destinatari per le
institutes, which
FMA
were the
all'inizio erano le ragazze.
so the main focus
L'attenzione
were
era
the ladies
rivolta
in the
alle
very
ragazze del
beginning,
popolo, ricche di
ladies coming from the
inventiva, duttili nella
people
soluzione dei
and
problemi, quelle
making
della
them
vita ordinaria,
flexible in
quotidiana, che
finding out
chiedono il loro
solutions
contributo
before
per
daily
cavarsela, per
problems,
risolvere gli aspetti
in order
ordinari
to
della vita,
solve ordinary
nell'immediato
problems in the
dopoguerra,
everyday
per
life,
un contributo alla
in the
famiglia e
immediate
anche per un
post-war,
utilizzo
not
personale
only
per il
for the family
corredo,
but
che
also
era
for the
tanto
person
necessario allora per le ragazze.
itself.
Questo soprattutto
And this
per le ragazze, perché a molte di loro mancava la possibilità di accedere alla padronanza di un mestiere, di una piccola parte ai beni della lingua, della cultura, necessari ad aprire i loro orizzonti. Situazione allora non lontana da molti paesi di missione. Erano tempi in cui l'immigrazione era una necessità per l'Italia. L'esperienza di Suor Anita con le ragazzine di Valle Crozia e di Genova e quelle di Don Valentini a Napoli con gli Sciuscià furono punti di riferimento per avviare un dialogo con le istituzioni pubbliche per una ricerca e collaborazione educativa e operativa strutturata, aperta e gratuita.
For free and open to all. Vocational training is still nowadays like this. Sister Anita had an open mind, an open heart, great ability to dialogue in a clear way, able to be open to all, involved in political and entrepreneurial realities. Also many lay people, political people and religious people who collaborated with that acknowledge these great qualities.
A fondare con SDP ed altre realtà nazionali come le altre associazioni cristiane lavoratori e con altre realtà il progetto politico istituzionale della formazione professionale in Italia. I suoi punti costanti di riferimento sono stati la conoscenza e l'attenzione, lo studio delle opere delle figlie di Maria Ausiliatrice esistenti in Italia, la continua ed esclusiva interazione con il governo centrale dell'Istituto, and the central management of the
Institute,
e la riflessione dell'evoluzione storico-politica del nostro paese e dell'Europa. Una sua particolare attenzione, si informava costantemente
She was always informed, updated, she was always reading, looking, watching at the news.
Dai due istituti salesiani è stato per questo un compito incalcolabile, a partire dalla configurazione teorica per l'adeguamento delle qualifiche, a cui è seguita la ricerca per la pianificazione dei percorsi formativi, è stato possibile dare seguito a una serie di elaborazioni ed azioni quali la formazione del personale, l'organizzazione tecnica, l'attrezzatura dei laboratori a livello nazionale, sempre, la validazione e il riconoscimento delle qualifiche, l'interazione con le diverse
qualifications along with the collaboration with all the institutions which were present at the government level over the time, like for example Finance Ministry, Labor Ministry. She had to do with all these ministries, the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Provinces and of Regions. So she dealt with all these great institutions in a very clear and blunt manner.
Grazie.
Quindi
ha avuto a che fare con tutti questi ministeri oltre che con le regioni. Non ultimo il rapporto con i sindacati del lavoro. Inoltre, l'adempimento di riconoscimenti finanziari, le visite ispettive e tante altre cose. Una modalità dinamica, oltre che strutturale, ingaggiata per una configurazione istituzionale per l'aggiornamento costante di questo settore. In questa evoluzione storico-politica, preziosa è stata la lungimiranza e la capacità di Suor Anita di interagire, come abbiamo detto, con tutte le istituzioni in ogni loro mutazione.
Even if they were keeping on changing over the time, she dealt with politicians, experts, and people from all over, from all the sectors and entrepreneurs also. The evolution
dagli anni 50, 60
started in the 50s and 60s, imposed on both the Salesian Institute, the Salesians and us,
all'opera intrapresa una struttura civilistica. Questo è punto molto significativo, che consentisse, al pari delle altre organizzazioni pubbliche, la partecipazione di diritto al dibattito sociale e politico, alla progettazione di percorsi formativi, all'accesso ai bandi e ai pubblici finanziamenti, in rapporto alle esigenze formative ed educative, in particolare per i giovani e quelli un po' più in difficoltà. Occorreva una configurazione istituzionale che desse la possibilità di integrare, interagire e dialogare con il pubblico, il pubblico, cioè le istituzioni, una personalità giuridica che legittimasse il dialogo con le istituzioni e con la società. Fu necessario studio, confronto che portarono alla fondazione dei due enti promotori, il CNOS, Centro Italiano Opere Salesiane per gli SDB, e il CIOS, Centro Italiano Opere Femminili Salesiane. Questi sono i due enti promotori. Questi due enti promotori come tali avevano la possibilità di promuovere altre opere, sia per i salesiani che le FMA. Entrambi questi due enti ottennero il riconoscimento della personalità giuridica col decreto del Presidente della Repubblica allora. Per il CIOS la firma del decreto avvenne il 20 ottobre 1967 e anche per i salesiani poi non l'ho reperita la data, ma è sicuro questo dato che è stata anche per loro il decreto del Presidente della Repubblica, non lavorati insieme. Questi due, la cosa più importante è che per la firma di questi due decreti lo statuto è costituito dalle costituzioni dei salesiani e delle FMA. Lo statuto del decreto era quello. I due decreti, sì, il documento base, il riconoscimento della personalità giuridica diede la possibilità ai due istituti FMA e SDB di promuovere in diversi momenti associazioni educative di diritto pubblico. Il CIOS-FP e il CNOS-FAP per la formazione professionale, il VIDES, molto più recente, per il volontariato delle FMA, il VIS per il volontariato degli SDB, più recentemente il CIOS Scuola e il CNOS Scuola, poi l'SCS, l'associazione promossa dai salesiani per il servizio civile. Le altre associazioni invece furono copromosse dai due istituti insieme, PGS per lo sport, CGS per la cultura e il cinema, TGS per il turismo giovanile e sociale, COSPES per il supporto di assistenza e consulenza psicopedagogica e orientativa. Un'organizzazizione, come voi potete pensare, veramente hard, veramente coinvolgente tutta l'Italia. Abbiamo dunque come risultato una organizzazione dei servizi di pubblica utilità da parte delle realtà salesiane, che conferì alle due congregazioni il volto civile e il diritto di dialogare col pubblico, partecipare a bandi, iniziative, discutere sui problemi sia a livello nazionale, europeo e promosso nel contesto delle attività formative dei servizi. La capacità di interazione politica di Soranita in collaborazione con gli SDB e con le altre organizzazioni che si raccolsero successivamente, cioè Forma e Confap e altre anche, dopo il 1970 per l'unificazione delle regioni, per la fondazione delle regioni e quindi l'autonomia delle diverse regioni, prima di essere presentata in Parlamento questa legge 845, per la formazione professionale in Italia, quando sono state fondate le regioni, è stata coordinata in via Marghera, nella sede dell'ufficio di Suor Anita, nella sala di rappresentanza delle FMA, quella sala che è un po' riservata e che comunque costituisce un bene per il patrimonio artistico nazionale. Lì si radunavano Suor Anita, Don Dante Magni Salesiano, il direttore nazionale del Ministero del Lavoro Gergo allora, il Ministero del Lavoro onorevole Foschi, ma poi anche altri, ed altri funzionari competenti per questa legge che è stata varata e che è ancora in azione. Le doti di intraprendenza e lungimiranza di Suor Anita si sono rese attive anche sul piano educativo didattico. Ad esempio, già nei primi anni 70 lei riteneva importante offrire alle allieve la possibilità di tirocini guidati presso le aziende. Essa stessa promosse l'esperienza presso la Sigma Tau, una industria farmaceutica di Pomezia, e venivano accompagnate le ragazze a questo tirocinio. Lo sguardo su prospettive future portarono la sua attenzione anche alla formazione dei giovani adulti che avevano bisogno di aggiornare le loro competenze sul lavoro, ma anche alla necessità di rispondere ai bisogni di personale preparato, religiose comprese, come formatori sul campo. Fu per lei indispensabile la collaborazione con i laici, anche quando ancora le religiose detenevano tutti gli aspetti delle opere dell'Istituto. Il coinvolgimento dei laici per Suor Anita non è stata prioritariamente l'urgenza di reperire personale per i corsi di formazione, è stata piuttosto una formula integrata, lungimirante, per la qualità dell'offerta formativa, cui contribuiscono diverse competenze ed esperienze di vita. Un impegno laico con i laici, fondato sulla vision e la mission tipicamente salesiana, valori cristiani, valori di impegno di cittadinanza, buoni cristiani onesti cittadini, un approccio dialettico di queste due realtà, valori cristiani e impegno di cittadinanza, possiamo dire sistemico, quello del carisma della missione di Don Bosco, accolta da Suor Anita, da tante nostre consorelle, come abbiamo sentito. La sua opera continua, la formazione professionale in Italia è significativa, raggiunge 15.000 circa ragazzi in Italia, i salesiani, i dati ci sono, è possibile vederli, e il lavoro per questi ragazzi è aperto, arriva all'80-90% di inserimenti lavorativi, gratuito, compresi i tablet, tutto quello che serve per la scuola, completamente per la formazione professionale, completamente gratuito. E questa è la vita di una persona spesa per l'Italia, per i giovani e per il mondo, perché le fondazioni, come avete visto, non sono solo fondazioni per l'Italia, ma si stanno diffondendo in tutte le realtà come l'Ides ed altre, e anche le collaborazioni con l'Europa. Grazie tanto.
Grazie per la presentazione.
Thank you for your presentation. Now we change continent.
Che ci presenta la figura di Suor Nancy Pereira.
Sister coming from India, she will introduce to us to the figure of Nancy Pereira.
Buon pomeriggio a tutti e
Good
tutti.
evening to everybody.
Penso che tanti di
I
voi
think
già
some of
conoscete
you
Suor Nancy
already
Pereira.
know Sor
Quindi,
Nancy Pereira.
sono molto
Therefore,
contenta
I'm
di
so
condividere
glad
con
to
voi
share
la
with
sua
you
vita e la
her
sua
life
missione.
and her mission.
Però, parlerò in inglese.
I will talk
e
into
per la
English,
presentazione alcuni slide,
and then
sono
I
in
will
inglese
show
e
some
alcuni sono in italiano.
slides. There will be some in English and some in Italian.
I'll be talking about Sister Nancy.
Parlerò Nancy Pereira nel paese, nella prima slide, come vedi, come vedete, c'è
traits that made her outstanding. Then comes the difficulties or the challenges that she encountered, the aspects of preventive system, which she put forth creatively in her works, and finally, the fruits of her work. Okay, the profile. Sister Nancy Pereira, the first daughter of Mary Help of Christians from Kerala, South India, was born on 14th August 1923 in Puducherry, in the coastal region of Trivandrum, Kerala, as the youngest of 5 children to Marian Pereira and Agnes Pereira, who were actively involved in the parish activities and in the service of the poor. Raised up in a Catholic family environment and studied in the institution run by the Carmelite sisters, she was motivated to become a religious. Encountering one of the FMA aspirants, Juliana Fernandez, later who became Sister Helen Fernandez, the first Indian provincial, Nancy was inspired to become a Salesian sister. Thus, in 1942, she went to Broadway, Madras, presently known as Chennai in South India, where she began her formative journey in St. Thomas the Apostle province, INM. Nancy made her first profession on 6th January 1945 and her final after 3 years. She was assigned with various responsibilities like assistant of the boarders, student, caterer, bursar, teacher, architect, social worker, animator of the communities, etc. One of her exceptional talents was the architectural and designing skills, which she put forth in constructing buildings in various centers. Another area of her dedicated mission was in the social ministry, which she implemented in the Beatitudes Welfare Center in Vyasarpadi, Madras, again in South India, in collaboration with the Salesian Fathers. Subsequently, after the inception of the Sacred Heart Province, Bangalore, INK, bifurcated from INM, she was fully involved in the uplift of the slum in Alsur in Bangalore, in southwest India, by organizing a maxi project called FEEDIS, that is, Family Integrated Development Education Scheme, which is her brainchild. After an intense service of 65 years as religious, she took flight to her heavenly abode on 14th July 2010. Okay, we'll move on to the second nucleus, that is, what are her exceptional talents or traits that makes her an outstanding religious? And I know that those of you who know Sister Nancy would unanimously agree with me that her exceptional talent or trait is her immense love for the poor. Sister Nancy is a well-known figure in all the communities where she lived, but very especially in the slums of Vyasarpadi in Madras and Alsur in Bangalore for the enormous enterprising works that she carried out in uplifting the poor, especially the women, due to which she is familiarly recognized by others with different designations like indefatigable entrepreneur, this title is given by Saint Pope John Paul II himself. Then heroine of India's untouchables, sister of the Bank of the Poor or sister banker, architect of women's development, Mother Teresa of South India, etc. She inherited this empathy for the poor right from her younger age, from her parents, which made a strong impact on her as she grew up. At her first meeting with Sister Helen Fernandez, she asked her, "What do the Salesian sisters do?" And Sister Helen replied, "They stay with the poor." And this answer was the basic motivating force for Sister Nancy to become a daughter of Mary, Help of Christians. Thus, she herself stated once that her vocation is for the poor. Whatever might have been the responsibility entrusted to Sister Nancy, her love was always for the poor. She spent her entire life working for their empowerment and welfare through social service, teaching catechism, educating the children, conducting oratories, distributing food, taking care of them, etc. All her enterprising works drew their inspiration from her spouse, Jesus, during her intense moments with him invariably every day for 2 hours. Added to this, she paid a keen attention to the reality with an educational and evangelical outlook. Thus, she helped some lay people, particularly the workers who collaborated with her, by building houses for them. She started various projects to empower the poor women, and in 1977, when she arrived at the Beatitude Welfare Center, Vyasarpadi, she realized that the infant mortality rate was very high. She started a program called Mother and Child Program, which she renamed it later as Nutrition Education Program, with the aim of educating the mothers of neighboring slums in health, hygiene, and home care. She taught them some artistic skills. She taught them some artistic skills and handicrafts with which they could earn a living and feed their children. Subsequently, in 1993, with the founding of FIDES, she transformed the lives of many people with the aim of educating young women, because she believed that if a woman was educated, the whole family would be educated. She did this with the help of her volunteers by frequently organizing various awareness programs and activities in the slums and the villages. Like some of the activities are already projected there. Added to that, I would say something more like health awareness programs, natural family planning, HIV/AIDS, literacy, women's rights, legal education, evil effects of alcoholism through Alcoholic Anonymous groups, nutrition education program, frequent general medical immunization camps, training in income-generating programs, and so on. And there are so many other things which are already presented in the video, which is in the website. Apart from these, the innovative idea introduced by Sister Nancy in the slum and villages was the saving schemes. She motivated the women to save ₹1 or ₹2 every day, which were deposited in the bank set up by Sister Nancy, which offered loans up to ₹5,000 at an interest rate of only 2%, which the poor people did not find difficult to repay. In this way, they could get loans to set up their own shops, buy a small piece of land to grow vegetables, or start a business. By this, they learned to refrain from being spendthrift and to save the money to meet their necessary future expenses. Witnessing these enormous works of Sister Nancy, one may question, did she ever face any opposition in carrying out these works? Of course she did. Initially, in the areas of her mission center, diseases were very common. The place was so filthy that one could not even walk through the narrow streets without the stench adhering to the clothes. Addiction to alcohol and drugs was nothing new. Unemployment was widespread. Women were not able to exercise their right of living a peaceful life due to their drunken husbands. Moreover, her first experience in the slum, especially in Ulster, was very disheartening. Some people abused her verbally and others were indifferent. One drunkard flung a drum at her, still others rejected her. Some others closed their doors on her face. Till the arrival of Sister Nancy to Ulster, no other social worker dared to carry on their work in this place. At Vyasarpadi too, there was a lot of opposition from the part of the politicians and the local leaders who even attempted to kill her. In all these circumstances, Sister Nancy did not lose hope, but constantly persevered with tenacity with the sole aim of empowering the poor people. We'll go to the fourth nucleus where we'll see the different aspects of preventive system which Sister Nancy put forth creatively in her works. Looking at her life and ministry, one could testify that she clearly embodied the identity of the institute, that is, the education of young people of the working class, especially the poorest, with the spirit of the Dhami Animas Ceterathole. Through every initiative or program that she animated, she taught the poor, especially the women, to live a dignified life, to take care of themselves and their families, and to maintain hygiene. Aiming at the integral education of the poor people, she also encouraged and trained the staff to make education the basic objective. Her educational goal was to alleviate the problems of the unfortunate and undernourished women and children, to awaken in them the sense of dignity, to make them self-sufficient through self-employment skills in order to generate income for the family and save a certain amount for the future. So she used to repeatedly say,
real charity is helping people to stand and support people. From my point of view, this is charity.
The Amore Velezza that says according to Sister Nancy. An evangelical characteristic of the preventive system cited in the constitutions of the Daughters of Mary, Help of Christians, is patient charity that excuses all, trusts all, bears with all, and never loses hope. As quoted above, Sister Nancy confronted many difficulties in promoting the women's rights. But without losing hope, she won the hearts of her opponents through love and optimism. Precisely this optimistic attitude kept her cheerful always, which is one of the characteristics of Salesian charism, so much so that those who saw her describe her as a cheerful, energetic, and iron lady. The charity of Sister Nancy embraces everyone without any discrimination. Her work did not have any confinement regarding religion, caste, or language. Though her focus was on women, she reached out to everyone, including the young people and men. She built up good rapport with the rich people too, who generously offered help in her mission. Not only from abroad, but Sister Nancy used to get help also from the local benefactors. One of the objectives of her project was to create solidarity by providing equal opportunities for both men and women, thus creating a fraternal society. We'll go to the final one, that is the fruits of her hard work. The fruit of her hard work is seen in the development of the slums and in the villages and the life of numerous people who benefited from her service and training. Almost all the women in these places reminisce with gratitude that they have become confident to face a crowd, have become self-sufficient, and knew how to manage their families. There are many who are well-educated and holding a very high position in the society as doctors, engineers, and professionals. In recognition and appreciation for her works, she was accorded with many awards locally as well as internationally, like a certificate of acknowledgement by the local government, Golden Apple from the Foundation Marisa Belisario, Mimosa di Oro Award from Blue Drops Group of Naples, Italy, who also declared her that year as a Woman of the Year, Mandir della Pace Award at Assisi, Italy, Talemon Award at Padua, Italy, Messenger of St. Anthony's International Award from Padua, again Italy, and Bronze Award from St. Anthony's International Association. Thanks to Sister Nancy, who through her educative method transformed the lives of many people. Thank you, grazie dell'ascolto.
Grazie per la presentazione.
Thank you for your presentation. Let's now move to Brazil. Sister Pereira, talking about his sister Olga de Sá. FMA, Sister Olga de Sá was a Brazilian nun, very appreciated for her work in primary and secondary educational work in the St. Teresa d'Avila University at the service of the people of Rolena in Paraíba in São Paulo, Brazil. She was born in a small town called Ierte, whose name in the local language means freedom or also unique place. Maybe this word and unique place found a great meaning in the spirit of this sister, encouraging her to be innovative in her works, giving rise to the birth of a unique place. Her father worked in the hotelery sector. When she was younger, she enrolled in the FMA school in São Paulo do Brazil, and she thought to become a contemplative nun, but studying at the FMA school, she opted for life at the service of the youth. In the 50s, she started to work in the feminine sector at the University of FMA University, and the young Olga de Sá arrived in Lorena in January 1954, accompanied by Sister Emilia Simone, the vicary, Sor Ines. Upon invitation of the Salesian Father Carlos Leonso da Silva, who was the director of the University of Philosophy and Literature in Lorena, the two sisters started to prepare the exams for these young ladies and young students entrusted to the FMA system. So they shared the spaces with the public schools. So in the very first period, they just held pedagogy courses in September 1957. The first stone was set by Lorenzo Sigiotti, the major director of the Salesian order, the first stone of the current University Center of Teresa d'Avila, Unifatea. The classes of the faculty were increasing in terms of numbers and quality of the teachings. In 1972, the Salesian fathers, after closing the collegium and after recuperating in many spaces, decided to cover all the costs of superior courses by depleting the building of the FMA in Avenida Giuseppe Castro, which since its beginning worked as a secondary venue of the Salesian Faculty of Sciences and Literatures. With these buildings, the Salesian nuns and Olga Disha created this new University of Teresa d'Avila, guiding this Santa Teresa Institute and the integrated faculties. So Sister Olga Giussa, till 2014, was a manager, a productive teacher with a great academic and personal and religious path which characterized her life, because she really understood the human people's social problems, human problems, social problems. And it was a path of over 65 years, a path of a religious woman working as a writer, poetry writer, nowadays acknowledged for her educational activity in the primary and secondary school. She was beloved by her students as a mentor, and she was always present. She was always there for the youth while trying to cohabit with the greatest social cultural diversity and also the religious diversity which was there. Classical literature, economics, religious subject, and the religious people of the FMA in the 60s with a PhD in communication and semiotics, a master in psychology and clinical psychology with a great personality of Sister Olga, along with her sister. They were all able to consolidate through their work at school, attended by many people and loved by entire generations, from the primary education to the university level. So she left behind her a great university center with tens of courses, hundreds of halls, research areas, a lot of students, teachers, collaborators, a great reality, a lot of students, and of course their family behind them. She was a great researcher, an academic personality, member of the Council of State for the state of Sao Paulo. She brought stimulating analysis regarding literature and also a lot of books and articles. She attended a lot of congresses. Everybody was looking for her. Everybody wanted her as a guest. We can define her as the most acknowledged student of Clarice Lispector research. I mean, she wrote a lot of works on Clarice Lispector. A lot of people took a lot of time to understand that Clarice Lispector was Brazilian. She belonged to our literature tradition, and she could not have remained unknown in the Brazilian scenario. She dedicated all her life to God and to the human production. She produced a lot of fruits. She was a great missionary, leaving her great heritage for the eternity. Her commitment in education and the heart of the female Salesian commitment, loving and kindness. The preventive system belonging to the Salesian system is one of the main aspects that she developed in the best way she ever could. The last award she received, on the occasion of the last award received, she said, "Friendship never disappears." And this is the certainty. Life is worth living because life has the same value as what we receive back. So this is our sister, Dr. Olga Pisa.
We keep on going. We express our welcome.
Ok, va bene. Grazie per la correzione.
She will introduce another nun. We don't have the title in the program. Sorry, Angela. The nun is Angela Cardani. Was born on May 18, 1925 in Gerago, a small town near the Lake of Varese, framed by the Prealps and the first foothills of the Alps, by Father Carlo and Mother Maria, deeply committed to the Christian community and able to be close to the poor. In 2025 in Gerago.
Bisogna togliere l'audio. Sì, però ne abbiamo mandato anche uno senza, non so. Ma si va bene anche con l'audio e io non so.
Magari se si riesce a abbassare. Ok, già, si può andare.
Posso ricominciare?
May I start again?
Suor Angela Cardani nacque.
Suor Angela Cardani was born on May 18, 1925 in Gerago, a small town near Lake of Varese, framed by Prealps and the first foothills of the Alps by Father Carlo and Mother Maria, who were deeply committed to the Christian community and close to the poor, to whom they offer concrete help. Angela was the eldest of 5 other children, and her young life, she was just 12 years old, was soon confronted with the suffering due to the sudden death of her mother. From the pre-adolescence to adolescence, she was a student of the Femme College in Milan, in the Porta Vittoria area, the stretch between the Duomo and municipality, a combination that for her will become inseparable. Being in a family full of God, having walked along FMA and capable of expressing the joy of consecration and love for young people, these were the decisive elements for choosing the Lord as the center of life. After graduating, she taught in the elementary school of Santo Stefano, a village not far from her home, in 1947. After an affectionate, painful mediation with his her father, she began training in the Sacred Mount province of Varese, a San Ambrogio alone, and then in Bosso, when she made her first vow on August 5, 1949. She pronounced her definitive yes in 1955 in Rome. She began her mission in the family home of Varese as an assistant and teacher of music, then in the student house of the same city as a catechist provincial delegate. And in 1976, she joined the Sacred Heart province in the land of the founders. Here she was provincial councillor of youth ministry for more than one mandate, animating the community, including that of Sacred Heart. The former pedagogical one were together with the residents' community, the aspirant postulants, the Union of Italy, and the world were all together formed. Together with the love to the poorest, back to 1988, the century year of Don Bosco, she was in one of the Turin suburbs where the youth disc for women reached alarming peak, supported by the provincial council and flanked by the FMA, who share with her the years of Sacred Heart, and by a group of lay people. She gave life to the Vides main association, and the small community began to live a social housing apartment in a house like that of everybody. Through the intense dialogue with the municipal and the regional administrations, project to prevent youth distress and support parenting began. Also the ones to develop communities that still today, give voice to those who risk being invisible. She had recently celebrated 7 years of profession when on October 27, 2019, Our Lady took her by the hand, accompanied her to meet the Lord. The red thread that runs through the life of Sister Angela and traces of her that she had never abandoned her love for the poor and the unlimited trust in their capacity for redemption. This is not only the opinion of those who shared her mission, and not only the people, the young people she supported in life, as confirmed by the institution with which she interacted. The silver medal awarded to her by the President of the Piedmont region during the event Great Stories, Great Women, was accompanied by a plaque with the inscription to Sister Angela Cardani for her great commitment to the most fragile in the territory. The President explained the reason. He said that Sister Angela's path is long prepared by her predilection for poor young people. When several years ago she arrived on the territory of the municipality, she did not stop to see the school dropout, the environmental degradation, the discomfort of family condition, the fragility of families, but looking with the eyes of the heart, she grasped the potential to develop the capacity for the affection and relations that were supposed to be addressed. The long journey, so the sharing with poor was daily bread, and unrevealed in the circumstances with which at different times she had been confronted. She was able to collaborate in the reconstruction of hope in Friuli, devastated by the earthquake, and finally landed in the great Turin suburbs, giving life to a project focused on young people and women, both at that time, late 80s, and in that place, and because of the persistent stereotypes of the past, the birth in the 90s and the homonymous, the Vides main association, an anonymous cooperative social solidarity, gave birth 7 years later, indicated his dreaming And she wanted to give voice to the most fragile, and she wanted also to measure herself against bureaucracy without letting be overwhelmed, and make available the treasure of Salesian spirituality and pedagogy, so that a new geography of the neighbor could be developed. Among the many step and takes, she really could bet that a group of adolescents from the most considered as lost case could pass from discomfort to openness to others. Approved by the Council was a project which established on the territory a new way of looking at young people, not as threat, but as a resource for change, as well as having intercepted desire for protagonism of women. And she also offered women a series of opportunities for empowerment, also thanks to the municipality of Turin and with the European Union. With equal courage, she dealt with the municipal office and of ethnic minorities for women and child protection at the Gypsy camp in Rome, where mothers with their children and adolescents had a marginal role in the community, had no social guarantee or access to education. In the territory, among the people at the situation, Sister Angela is remembered as a source of hope, as the one who taught us, and it's the young people who affirm it, to look at the sky over the roof, as the one who knew how to go beyond ideologies, tradition, culture, and collaborating, making them dialogue, like one spoke of the tenders of that goat, father of all, like the one who dared courageous projects to improve the quality of life, especially of young people and women, like the one who brought the voice to the poor of institutional offices. Indifferently from ages, she's also remembered for her big heart and for her wide open arms, where she listened to the others who told her, "I need you." In stopping with teenagers on the benches of nothingness, as she defined them, Sister Angela felt, however, the lack of vital places where young people could meet generation, talk to each other, make community. It was a challenge that, with her granitic faith in Providence, seized without hesitation. There was a former kindergarten of 1,000 square meters that was with asbestos in the roof and decayed electrical system, and that was placed in the middle of the popular towers, with the typical initiative of the Lombards and the spirit of the Mahi animus. The dream turn into reality. Maria considered the house on the square was called La Finestrella, like the one of Valponasca, from which could be looked straight at the tabernacle in which Sister Andrea, with her committee, laid her heart to know how to welcome all young people. No one's excluded. She also drew strength from here to face the challenge of multiculturalism in the poor area, and also in areas like Tunisia, Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria, Peru, Eastern Europe, women, young people, families. So while her goal was to offer primary to children, young people, women, tools to overcome language barriers and make them able to express their feeling, their emotions. With this ideal, she was committed in exploring the regional law on immigration to promote obtaining a suitable home and insert children in school, vocational training, integration through cultural activities. So having created this vital place to the charity and having offered such opportunities to young people was considered always a serious burden by those who move the threats of illegality in the shadows of shadows. And she experienced a bad experience and of a robbery, and nevertheless nothing stopped her. Also, the religious dialogue was a very important aspect. The la finestrella vandalization who take place makes the situation hard. It was not difficult for her to talk about all her sons. In each subject, it was clear that the signs of the Preventive system, they belong to her DNA. So what the young people loved, she animated the soccer playing of the young people, music, so that the young people could feel harmony and beauty. And once again, she stimulated in the young people the will of knowing, of finding out new things. At the same time, she was supported with different institutional figures, and she never relentlessly highlighted that of negotiating opportunities for the youngs, and for that was for her now her people. It's not easy to the well-known 3P. It's an element of her education, and loving kindness was also an element of her education, and several pages were dedicated to him. You were my window, you show me a new horizon, and you show me the dream that God put in your heart. So that is one of the first girl wrote, that today is a mother, which was approached by her during her adolescence. So among that buildings, she was able to color them. Nobody ever talked about God. I didn't know him. I met you, and God now is part of my life. Among the many mothers who approached her, wrote hand, tenderness of a hand. It's the best sign to explain to us the presence of God. So during a seat in the region, a councillorship gave told her to say, Suor Angela, that when I was councillorship, she believed in me, and since I saw her, how she's working with the pure, I thought that if she's following so firmly this God, that means that God exists, this may be there.
Bene, prima di iniziare, cioè rimetterci nuovamente, no, in questi temi così belli e profondi.
And deepening ourselves in this such profound topic, I forgot to tell you that we want to thank Don Pasquale. And we are very glad, we are honored that he is here. We are very honored to have him here. His support, affection, and trust that he always extended to us. Thank you for being here with us. Yes, so we can, with some such sounds, and we can awake ourselves. We have sound effects. Now, this is only Monday. That's the first day of our conference. Maybe on Friday we will be more tiresome. Well, this is the second session. We'll deepen the topic with this issue, the contribution, FMA contribution to reflection on education. The first remark is of Vera is a professor here at Auxilium, and on the methodology and method of Don Bosco and the history of the Institute. From 2001 to 2021, she was the director of the Institute, and there's multiple publications are on the Salesian charisma. So his remark hinge upon the guidelines of the FMA Institute for the education of young women, diachronic path. I apologize if I make you run. I correct myself, make you fly, or may flying over. So quickly review the 150 years of the education. It's a matter of fact that the Institute of the Daughters Mary Help of Christians over these 150 years has been nourished by great educational missionary dreams. We had it in the profile presentations. These dreams have activated and strengthened over time in 5 continents an impressive creativity in the name of the educational preventiveness. It is a non-welfare operational perspective of pure charity or recovery, but it's really an authentic promotion of the person who is formed to autonomy, freedom, active insertion in the social context. The Salesian educators, inspired by the charism of the founder in the various historical periods, have tried with humble means and great courage to prepare the future. And they did it through educational paths that are suitable for girls, boys, adolescents, and young people of various contexts, with giving particular attention to young women. We do know that the key to preparing for the future is, in fact, education, but starting from the weakest population in the social chain, and this awareness does not soften, diminish over the years. Indeed, it seems to be strengthened today from these unprecedented challenges. So the question that I pose to this reflection is the following: what orientations have sustained throughout history the mission of FMA in the horizon of preventive education? Are some lines of proposals that actually inspire, guided, and even verify the commitment of those who have dedicated themselves to education? But we have to acknowledge that the Institute, the vivacity and plurality of the educational works, and we saw this morning, the statistical, we have documented it thanks to Maria Teresa's survey, were thousands of works of educational works. So the vivacity of the plurality of educational works are inversely proportional to the systematic reflection on education, on the educational method, on the formative processes of educators, female educators. Having the documentation in my hands, there is a surprising delay in the line of reflection on the contribution on the preventive system. So we'll have to have a contribution that must be articulated and that can be developed with the voice or the pen of an FMA woman. How to explain such delay? I try to give some answers. First of all, the Institute was founded in 1872. We do know that was developed at the Salesian organization. It belongs into the same religious family at the institutional level. And therefore, for many years, it took advantage from the direct advice and presence of the Salesians, as well as from their orientations. But at the same time, at the beginning, there was an unavoidable task: do for the girls what the Salesians do for boys. And such indication was not interpreted from the institution as a passive imitation of the Salesian male experience. It was combined with a margin of flexibility and creativity, and at the same time was taking into account the female resources and the needs of the cultural formation of women. The educational formative experiences of Mother Emilianowska, as was mentioned before, from 1880 to 1900, she was general counselor, and she was in charge of supervising the educational works of the Institute and the formation of the teachers, educators. We do recognize in her the educational men's of the origins and the dialogue, interaction with the state school authorities that was always interacting with Salesians. They are absolute educators, but at the same time also in line with the context and the woman and as a school teacher. So there were shaped also on this experiential track all the different institute bodies, orientation of the institute. It was a kind of paradigmatic experience that wanted to be shifted from Ornese to Nizza to the Institute. And we could say that it was a kind of narrative, pedagogy narrated with life. It was elaborated by women, educators that were Salesian by instinct, to tirelessly measure themselves with emerging educational questions that were emerging. So the lack of writings on the pedagogical and formational educational system is striking. If we think that, if you bear in mind that from its origin to today, this educational experience was the most consistent and relevant. Even more disheartening was the observation that only in the Institute was only explicitly and thematically spoken of the preventive system. The first time appears in 1969, and the constitutional text refers at that time. So at the beginning of the 20th century, some profiles, like some people like Superior General Mother Caterina Daguerro, had some rather rigid interpretation on the method. So she decided to invite Don Filippo Rinaldi to hold some conferences about the community of Nizza Monferrato. And Professor Rufinato studied very well these issues. After this presentation, and these are actually the first orientations on the preventive system, after that presentation that took some days to be explained, the objection of Annan was, why we were not told about these things first? You know, is all this an innovation? And Don Rinaldi replied, it is not an innovation, no, but it's a delay that can be explained in 1,000 ways. And first of all, the superiors were first of all concerned with your religious spirit rather than pedagogy, because forming the spirit was something of the utmost importance. So what the FMA were supposed to learn was how to be religious women. They did know already to be educators. She was instinctive. They were instinctively Salesians. But thanks to their apostolic zealous, we understand that they understood that they have to refer more explicitly to the preventive system, especially when they were facing interpretive difficulties, and they understood and moved away from a model that was supposed to be paradigmatic for the whole institute and at all latitudes. In the Institute, concerning the preventive system, an unrelentless process. We can use an expression borrowed from the well-known philosopher Paul Ricoeur, who writes, "A tradition does not remain alive except in an uninterrupted process of reinterpretation." The preventive system is a legacy, so deep, so rich of potentials, that only by reinterpreting and constantly reinterpreting it can hold and last through times, entailing continuity and vitality. Along their history, the FAA never ceased to confront themselves with the new social cultural challenges and education experience of Maria Mazzarello. So the educational model has been constantly rediscovered, reformulated with different and original tones. However, it is recognized that in some certain places and certain times there have been some impoverishment, emphasis, accentuation of certain aspects that actually harm the holistic view of the system. So now here I would like to present the most significant turning points of this reinterpretation process. First, creativity, fidelity in line with the spirit of Don Bosco. According to the documented study of Piera Rufinato, fidelity to the spirit of Don Bosco is the interpretive key to the educational methodology of the FMA and all the orientation that we're giving from superiors at central level to the Institute. The reference to the founder is also the presuppositions that guarantees the vitality and continuity of the educational mission. This can be followed because there is a completely trust and faith in this process. Many understood this process, and they understood what Don Bosco was doing with young people. Therefore, it was so spontaneous, such fidelity to the Salesian educational model, but also always having in mind Don Bosco. There are few writings at that time, but we can also find a lot of enthusiasm, creativity, and there is a commitment to being faithful, to have this innate consistency with the legacy that they receive. Maybe among us in our institute it occurred what Giovanni Battista Francesca was saying about Valdocco. He was saying that the preventive system at its origins was practiced without calling it by name. In the education of girls, they were privileged recipients of the mission of the MA. It was constantly referred to da mi anima cetera tolli. That was a source of inspiration for every FMA who wanted to be faithful to the founder. Salesian educators, however, are sensitive and very attentive to the every new needs of girls and families, and they adopt proactive lines of intervention. Also, they were convinced that to women, new spaces have to be open. And therefore, in some places of the Institute at all levels, is introduced the topic of the establishment of a school from kindergarten to adolescence to the normal schools for training teachers, and we heard already in Argentina, in Peru, and in Polonia. The education of girls is not only aimed at family life, or the life in the family, but also at carrying out a didactic mission in the school. For this reason, as an explicit consequence, the cultural preparation of Salesian educators and teachers is dictated. And in the first 25 years of the foundation of the Institute, a responsible and constant commitment was made to qualify the level of cultural formation of FMA. So from this period on, we had, back to 1992, the first degrees in the university of the state universities, first in Genoa and then in Rome, and it was the precondition for manage normal schools both in Italy and abroad. Fidelity to the spirit of Don Bosco was also understood by the FMA as the formation of girls and young women in the associative life for works of informal education, orators, cultural groups, social commitment for workers, teachers, employees, and Filippo Rinaldi, there was the utmost reference point of the festive oratory of Torino Valdocco that was opened by the FMA at the beginning of the 20th century. oriented FMA to form young people open and sensitive to social problems, educating religious. They were supposed to be courageous in defending Christian values and also culturally prepared in the educational field of catechesis. Young women were stimulated to measure themselves with their intellectual, affective, and spiritual resources, and also in a group life, in the animation of the oratory, in the family, in the factory, in the school, to the condition of rigid subordination in which fascism really has relegated the women. Don Rinaldi contrasts a balanced recognition of their irreplaceable social mission. There was also a study of the first development of this oratory in Turin, and there was a publication curated by Dr. Bracco. So the orientation of Filippo Rinaldo, which opened new and prophetic horizon for the formation of young women, and at the same time for the reinterpretation of the preventive system, at that time were coexisting with forms that were reductive of the preventive system, that were struggling to disappear. And as taking into account the point referment of the people, the internals, the aspect of assistance was considered as monitoring, supervision. So the disciplinary was important, so that unity of method and direction was supposed to be one. And so the focus was on the uniformity of the method by commenting the formation of the women, people concentrating on the family. And in a certain way, that model considered the FMA formation as being a spouse, mother, and educator of daughters, of sons and daughters. Back to the 30s, for the first time, among the subjects to be studied for the novices, there was the Salesian pedagogy. They understood that the preventive system was not just a kind of style of lifestyles. It was like a corpora of principles that they were to be not only implemented but also justified. They were supposed to be taught to the new generations, but it is symptomatic that the teaching of such subject was always entrusted to a Salesian. The FMA kept on using the indisputable values of Bartolomeo Fasce, Francesco Rastello, Pietro Ricaldone, as other illustrious masters in the previous years. So the general councillors in charge of the studies, in their formative intervention, took up these teachings of undisputed pedagogical, Salesian pedagogical reliability, and tried to bring them together into an experience. They try to have a new hermeneutic of the preventive system. More than a set of disciplinary norms, they begin to speak about the spirit of the origins that was supposed to permeate as a lifeblood, the works, the houses, the educators, and teachers, and above all, the mother Angela Vespa, started to introduce in the guidelines given to FMA not only the reference model of Valdocco, as well as that of Mornese, that was actually illuminated by the figure Maria Domenica Mazzarella. At the same time, she was one of the first to get a degree in psychology to take into account the new instances of pedagogical activism that lead to attribute to girls unnecessary protagonism, albeit limited. In 1947, when the FMA, after the war, was asking themselves how to adapt practically to the needs of the present hours, the various activities which took place in favor of the girls, and also the dramatic experience of war stimulated the Church to have an open confrontation with culture in order to restore peace among nations and restore also the central role play of human beings and the defense of natural rights against the absolutist ideologies and advancing secularization. As anthropological and social perspective in education, the methodology registered different tones, also in line with the ecclesiastical magisterium. I remind you that Pius XII, while reaffirming that the specific place of women is within the household, invited the Catholic women to participate in political and social life and to find in their own particular field of action. However, the female model typical of Catholic association struggled to be assimilated or proposed in the educational projects and vocational training. As concerning the practices, position that are not very innovative, still remain, and they were also poorly adapted to social cultural transition. The category of maternal women was considered a unifying nucleus of the most genuine Salesian tradition as an expression of FMA pedagogical maturity in face of authoritarian and often repressive approaches to education as a legacy of past regimes, which has, however, struggled to disappear. So back to the 50s, 70s, Madre Linda Lucotti and Vespa, both who had a degree in pedagogy, contributed to give to FMA a new innovative breath from a pedagogical point of view. So in 1954, the International Institute of Pedagogy of Religious Studies in Turin opened up to the FMA and gave them the possibility of an academic training suitable for social, cultural, ecclesiastical changes. The educational process were deepened in the light of the science and pedagogical humanism of Don Bosco and Maria Mozzarella. During the conciliary period, there is a change of the interpretation of the pedagogy. So in the council, it was applied maybe with a lack of critical approach to the educative mission as a whole. The Don Vecchio said that there was a mismatch between education and pastoral, but the path was founded, and for a more articulated perspective of the 80s, for the 80s, the general chapters of the 90s on, from the 90s on, seems to be the most mature results of the preventive system interpretation. So it is clearly affirmed that youth pastoral and education are two different concepts, but on an existential point of view and their Salesian mission, they must be unified and strictly connected. Now, somebody tells me that I don't have much time left, so I'm approaching the end of my remarks. I would like to get to this point. I'm not saying anything of the big conference towards education of the women. Madre Antonia Colombo, in that meeting, really helped through her critical perception of the interpretation of preventive system to precise different elements. They said that we lower the bar of the preventive education in contemporary educations, and we were attracted by urgent educational problems. We didn't dedicate much time to develop educational proposals for young women, which were really confronted with the emergency concerning the females' questions. So they were lacking of originality and strength. So from this very point, the faculty likes to deepen more the female education, the huge women potentials that is a maker of social changes. Now, I don't want to quote all the publications, also in their reinterpretation of the preventive system. I go to the new hermeneutical approaches. So at the beginning of this, we found new hermeneutical approaches that are the referements of the educational method. So these evangelical, cultural, and communicative elements, as you can remember, they were collected in the document of the guidelines on the educational mission. We feel the responsibility of rereading with the feminine eyes the preventive system, and therefore different approaches are embraced. The contemporary cultures, we have a new feminine conscience which spur the Institute to go on with its reinterpreting process so that resilience and empowerment can be included. I remind you, a survey that has been carried out in the history, in the Institute, and then the participation to the that of the group of the peace, integrity of the create, decided to build a network of different institutions. So the online approach, help the Institute to work against human trafficking, and at the same time, also we have two bodies that are strictly connected to FMA, the New York office and the council that is with its office in Geneva. The siege for human rights has always stimulated more the preventive system within the view of human rights. The seminars on solidarity economy, suggested that the need for educating and getting educated and stimulated concrete steps in order to achieve not only a more sober way of living, but also to achieve a vision, and that was already said back to the 90s, of more integrated human development. And also the coordination was needed, so that there is a new style of education which enables to activate new dynamics that can empower people with the institutions, charismas, and also the response to the migratory event that must be standardized. You'll see there are all dimensions of the preventive system that were implemented through and taught to the orientations of the center of the Institute. The solution of the eco-communications have, for example, 4 major areas: education to communication, technology mediations, the art and expressions, communication for responsible citizenship. Another dimension of the preventive system that is still waiting for new development is the awareness of the vocational dimension of the educational missions. That is based on that each life evokes new actions, is a mission. At the same time, the idea that educating is a form of generation, is a self-generating thing that builds up identities through an involving relations and thanks to an environment that can lead to the reach maturity, and also through the interpersonal relations and ecclesial environment. Such vision was proposed back to 2010 and 2011 in these seminars, continental seminars. Do you remember about them? That produced a document that is not much known,
Untitled Comparison with the Christian Vision of Life, which is at the basis of the preventive system. It's a precious text. It's a precious volume. The main point of all these processes implemented in the Institute at the beginning of the third millennium is the integral vision of the person, but also of fraternity and brotherhood among people and populations of the world in view of the solidarity and anthropology worldwide. Creative fidelity towards educational choices of educators in modern times is a great inspiration. The secure vision, which is to be reinvented, replanned, and which is at the very basis of educational interventions in the wake of changing times. And then I will conclude, I promise. The educational charism, we all know it, but we will get stronger out of this Congress. It's not just a heritage to be kept. It's to be kept with a great faith, starting from the sources, but also to be reinterpreted, to be developed continuously in a network with a lot of people, institutions, because it contains, and I want to mention my great master, Don Pietro Grando, unlimited virtualities, great suggestions, full of developments, full of seeds ready to blossom and to expand themselves. Thank you. Thank you for these remarks. It's clear that Hans Einstein was right about the relativity of time. I apologize. Means that we can squeeze a lot of years in a few minutes. So thank you so much for your precious summary. Now let's give the floor to Sister Marcella Farina, Professor Emeritus of the Faculty Auxilium of Pedagogical Preventive Reflection on Women. She's member of the Pontificia Accademia Teologica, member and founder of Italian Society for Theological Research, member of Mariologica Association, Interdisciplinary Association. She is always committed in fostering the dialogue among theological sciences and educational sciences. She has worked on the female approach. She will talk about the Salesian and Preventive Pedagogical Reflection on Women in the Faculty of Education Auxilium. Thank you, Sister Farina. So please take the floor. Is it to switch it on? Okay, great. So, also this Congress, it's a great support of the faculty regarding the education of women in the changing world. So this Congress shows the constant synergy existing between the Institute of the FMA and its main bodies, the General Council, General Mother, and the Educational Sciences Faculty. Mother Lucotti and Mother Vespa have proved which are the main origins of this faculty and Faculty of Educational Sciences. I'm not used to read, but I have to do that because we have to squeeze our interventions, and I will have to be short. So I will start by an expression of Mother Antonia Colombo, Mother General, when she said, "I feel the duty to reveal the strong personal involvement in the subject entrusted to me and to justify the choice to treat it by sharing the synthesis of a critical reading of the lived experience." Well, it was on a special occasion of the faculty. On a very different level, me too, as a second generation, I share this feeling. Let's say the faculty has carried out many steps, has taken many steps in these 6 decades of activity, or starting in the 70s with the faculty emerging so far. How these researches have developed? Well, first of all, we can say that the main steps were the connection, first of all, the connection with the development of sciences, especially educational sciences. Another step was the reference to the legal institutionalization of the faculty through drafting and the revision of the statutes, which caused a lot of research and a lot of time taken for this. Also the relation to the dynamic configuration of the teaching staff and the student population, and also the attention to the emergence of specific professional profiles and their deep transformations. So the faculty has always been dynamic in research. Of course, I have made a big research, almost 40 pages. I will just offer a mapping of some coordinates with some useful elements to be shared. I organized everything in 2 big nucleus, the faculty as a community, research community, and the faculty in some of its peculiar researches. The faculty well, each university is an academic community that in a rigorous and critical way contributes to the protection and development of human dignity and cultural heritage through research, teaching, and various services offered to local, national, and international communities. The Catholic University in these objectives is animated by the Gospel. In fact, faith expands the spaces of reason and is the humus of research and the growth process of all its members. At the faculty in Turin, the academic community was a mixed one for the existence of two communities, religious and academic one, very numerous communities, international and intergenerational in a way, striving towards the realization of the singular purpose. Common life presented not a few hardships and problems. However, it had some advantages. It favored the mutual enrichment at the level of religious exemplarity and created a concrete form of empowerment and mainstreaming with the exchange of knowledge and experiences. We had a testimony of it. Then it was the hub for the revision of the constitutions and projects for the formation of pastoral care and the development of catechesis on a theoretical and operational level also. The synergy with the Institute was achieved and is still achieved, respecting the roles, skills, and the purposes. However, some inconveniences and problems were to be solved. The transfer to Rome also had these purposes. The relationships between the religious communities and academic community had to be clarified, and as the academic community was transformed and is transforming, both as to the teachers and the students, these relationships had to be revised, and also organizational models have to be revised. In Turin, mutual charismatic enrichment was a natural thing, but with the transformations of the community, the sharing of charismatic educational coordinates was to be promoted and is to be promoted with the new subjects involved who can show us that not yet of the charism. Internationality is a unique educational and training opportunity and also a resource for the encounter culture. Academic community is a fertile ground for research initiatives in a synergistic and synodal style. Also, this Congress is a similar example of that, combining a lot of resources, different positions, researches, and practical activities. There is a wide field of research linked to the training of teachers, which since the very origins had an international aspect, also in the professional preparation, beyond the prejudices of regarding female or male professions, like the degree in psychology or sociology, and at times were only belonging to male people. Anyhow, the trend changed. The working together was in the beginning a need to respond to an unprecedented task through an exchange of knowledge and scientific experience at a contact, epistemological, and methodological level. In the research, there was attention towards the person for the integral education, where the evangelical dimension is not just an addition, but speaks of fullness in the logic of the incarnation. Since the very origin, theology was at the basis of educational sciences, along with philosophy. Behind every research initiative, there is the intention to educate women. There are also some specific places for research that I will briefly show to you, explain to you the revision of statutes and the training offer. On this, I can say that in every revision of the statute and study plans, there has been a lot of research on educational sciences, also in comparison with other institutions and scholars. This work has been and is a permanent training of teachers because it promotes interdisciplinarity and reaches the scientific field of each of us. Since the very origin, the faculty combined together combined together pedagogy, catechesis, educational psychology, sociology, and education. In 2015, after verification, the following institutes were established: the Institute of Pedagogical Methodology, the Institute of Catechetical Methodology, the Institute of Psychological Research in the educational field, the Center for Women's Studies and Education, the Center for Studies of the FMA. Also in this field, there are many contributions of researchers, of teachers, in different fields, in professional associations, and you also work in some of these fields, and also in the teaching and scientific interventions, both at the faculties and behind it. The presence in Roma has offered new opportunities for discussion at the ecclesial, civil, and academic levels. The faculty has deprovincialized and has opened a new relationship with the magisterium. Some teachers, for example, have worked in the Synod of Rome, in the World Youth Days, in the preparation and development of the Great Jubilee, in international conferences, general and special synods, and others. The faculty was immediately involved in the university pastoral care promoted by Don Lorenzo Leuzzi, Bishop of Teramo, in three main fields of the faculty. We have collaborated through the university pastoral in these three fields by comparing our views with other academic institutions present in Rome. In the third mission, as a faculty, as the Auxilium, we offered a lot of services in catechetical training. We had a lot of courses of our religious people and the training for consecrated life, and in the initiatives of the USMI, with which we have collaborating ever since. And I have noticed how the link with the USMI and FMA is a strong ever since, strong and dynamic link ever since, and it was great to find it out in my research. Let's now consider another thing, the faculty in some specific research area. We cannot say it all. I will talk about two main international congresses and two seminars, and Educational Science magazine, which is the main tool by which the university and the faculty confront itself with other bodies. These two fields, the conferences and this Educational Sciences magazine, embraces a lot of areas in the educational sciences. If you want to consider it as a whole, well, you consider how this all has enriched the experience of the university as a whole. The consideration about women has been very attentive since the very beginning, avoiding to systematically avoid stereotypes and placing everything on the female and male, in the female and male actors. So mutuality has been very important in education. Behind the study of teachers, we have to remember round tables, workshops, and others. And there are also 3 series of publications, Prisma, Orizzonti, and Percorsi. As to the Journal of Educational Sciences, this is the institutional area of this confrontation, talking about the humanitarian aspects of this attention towards the women. The review, since the very beginning, we can see the growth of the scientific growth of teachers. I have also noticed how in the 70s there were many considerations regarding psychological aspects in the classical works, and these teachers were critical about these main works. So there is a continuous work on this. So the magazine, of course, started by being a set of publications of different things, so according to the productions of each and every single teacher, then they collected all together the reflections, the ideas in several files which were collected all together. So we moved from thematic organizations to real single subject dossiers regarding education for women from many points of view, also involving other institutions and other teachers from other educational realities. So by reading this magazine, I saw how, since the very beginning, teachers compare themselves with other teachers in a brave way, always with an eye to the history of women and the history of the youth. There are some things which go back and come back over the time always. I can also say that in the past many articles were published and many publications on the journal were the works of seminars, conferences, or subjects related to specific events. Then they collected all together the opinions regarding specific topics. But anyhow, you can always notice these in the journal. The multi-purpose approach, especially in the dossier at the level of pedagogic reflection and consideration, shows how the faculty considers reality fully in order to better respond to the educational need of new generation. And so, the systematic attention of the faculty to the reality of education of the new generation emerges, especially in the world of women, Salesian style. The choice of themes is linked to the aims of the magazine with a strong pedagogic aspect and feature, trying to combine together pastoral aspects and the Salesian ones. In this path of the magazine, the Areopagus of Sciences has expanded and increasingly specialized. The network of relationships with scholars and from other academic institutions has intensified. In comparison with new knowledge, aimed at entering the polyhedron of anthropologies, where new knowledge emerges with which we have to confront ourselves in order to thematize pedagogical Christian humanism, and always inspired by the Salesian ideas and the Marian ideas are always there and always highlight the importance of the vocation, the preparation of religious and pious women. Always Mary and women are two things going hand in hand in all these works. Let's now talk about conferences. I will try to be brief. I started from an expression of Margaret Mead of the 40s. She said that by educating women as men, we made a mistake. We have taken a big step ahead in the humanization of humankind. This question is very interesting nowadays due to the problems developed over the years regarding the identity of women and the attempt to create a proper humanity. The consideration of women was always linked to the...
I would like to indicate concreteness and by avoiding stereotypes as the division between males and females, so the spouse of, daughters that was typical of the past were accompanied by the declination in the male gender. Therefore, they thought about the women as a person. Now, these expressions instead are seen as a reference to a relational anthropology. The human relations is an urgency, an emergency to a full co-living of human beings. So in the meeting of 8 March 2022, the relations between female and males and the relation between man and woman, because we wanted to avoid all the linguistical misunderstanding and also the gender, sexual gender indications. So the social cultural transformation makes situation more complex and also are important for hermeneutics. And so they lead to a radical consideration on the humanism, the human being, and also religions can give an extra added value. So with such anthropological challenges in this polyhedron of anthropology, and about these congresses I had already dwell upon, deeply well upon in the Science and Education magazines. Therefore, you can read that article in that magazines. Now I will sum up. So the seminars have a red thread that it's important to highlight. So from our contents, the central-oriented person, especially women, of education, and the structural referment on the psychological point of view, the attention is given to the rigor of the research of related, relevant fields. At the same time, the attention to the dialogue, to confrontation, in a synergetic way that aims at education. With the progress of sciences, further articulation of sciences, the faculty wanted to revive and willingly the specificities about the formation. These changes were a unique opportunity for the professors as well, because during the meetings and conferences, they review their starting point. And so the meetings and conferences were not only just a gift for the others, but they were also a very beautiful experience of a transformative experience that professors learn from it, from the remarks presented from it. Since 1988, it's to 2022, it's a span time that's very long. So I would like to now get to the conclusion. The Frascati conference had as protagonist the professors of the faculty of FMA faculty and recipients, the former pupils. We were playing at home. But there was a change. Many different researchers maybe were disarticulated among each other, but they lead to have a unique perspective and a systemic perspective. So from about the Conference of Valence, I would like to recall some expressions of the dean of that time. She had the introductory remarks, because her words, I saw them extremely actual. She said, Antonia Colombo, she was the president. The research, we have to privilege the inductive approach in order to profile a descriptive frame of the emerging issues, a framework that is needed because few topics are the ideological field for speculation. as the one for women. So we have to retake the survey to phenomenal roots and get to a summary that has to lead to a unified educational approach. So we have to give to the research a prospective approach that should suggest guidelines for the future. So it's a wonderful introduction, and therefore the need and necessity to rethink conditions that favor a new self-esteem, self-awareness, both for females and males. So not only concerning convictions, but also the esteem for the personality, because since the first years, the personality must be developed and have his own or her own conscience, and this conscience must be elaborated through time, that can be expressed also through collaboration, and also because the other difference can be expressed for the common good. Such expressions show a today task, and we have multiple approaches to it. The education of female males in the postmodernity is one of the track that is more overreaching because it has the conquering of subject auto-determination and as a good for all. This perspective is great, and therefore this is the task of the individual anthropology that is at the service of truth, the research of huge proportions, urgent research, as she was saying, that actually overcome us, and at the same time falls within our competences. Now, I goes next. In the site, you can find remarks, a statement, and you can see we have many pages. It's a big of many pages. I carry out such surveys as a kind of gratitude towards a generation, and therefore I wanted to be precise within this perspective. For sure, the conference of Colle Valenza in '87, back to '87, was more articulated at scientific level compared to the ones in Frascati. What are the huge challenges that we had in Colle Valenza? For sure, the ecclesial context now is more mature. If you think about St. Paul John II, that was suggesting to give more space to females in the laity and the culture of life, with a special task that the Pope was giving to the female world. But most of all, with the fourth conference of Peking, where the two aspects were considered, and in particular the gender category, that as research of the 80s analyze different aspects of the feminine roles, because disrupted the female subject and turn out to become to the individual. So women who work for women. But for sure, this gender that has been introduced was introduced in Beijing in other perspectives. And this is because the identity paths in the conscience of our own individuality are far more complex, far more articulated, far more problematic compared to the previous period of time. So what was the feature of Colle Valenza? For sure, we were the managers of the event, but Colle Valenza was a multicultural event that we were confronting ourselves with other researchers, other institutions, other educational congregations that love to educate women we also had a seminar about it so that we could develop a project to take into account the sensibilities of not only FMAs, but also all the world that concentrate on education of women. And so it was a more wider Congress. But from there, we had fundamental studies and on female, educational females with a particular perspective that is for females. So the research perspective, when we were talking about gender, took also other paths because was consideration on the education of women and marry. But in Frascati was supposed to be deepened and articulated and compared with the new emerging technology sciences. In Frascati we couldn't do it because we didn't have the right skills, but after Polyvalenza, after the network we built with other researchers and scholars, we felt brave, we were enough courage to keep on and the Mary model, because from Mary we learn how we become a person and cover both the female-male models, not only the female models. Therefore, that was a path that was extremely interesting and fundamental. Then we started with the humbleness. And so these disciplines open new scenarios. For example, the fact that we consider theology as education, but actually theology was interrogating us, was questioning us, and on the science of education, covering pedagogy and so on. So it was a broad path. This is an open path. What I would like to say is that with such topic, we open up the research paths, multiple research paths. Therefore, the Areopagus of the science of education got broader. The Salesian pedagogical humanism must be further elaborated, otherwise becomes a motto, and has to be confronted with new knowledge that we are not familiar with. Therefore, we have to have the courage to listen to those who are expert. I would like to skip a lot of things and jump to the conclusion. For sure, I am not concluding because there are open paths from the first generation to the other generation that has to keep on following, because the polyhedron of anthropology is becoming more and more complex. And the facets of polyhedron can become more complicated. Since the origins emerged the attention to the preparation of the professors, teachers in different countries, in different university institutions. An element to bear in mind is to think about the future by thinking that you have to invest in the fecundity of the institute and its mission. For sure, the teachers transform itself with new teachers, new professors, and the professors are not FMA. Is considered an enrichment at the research and didactical level, and also in the territory. But this doesn't rule out. Instead, requires FMA teachers within more broad projects at international level. So in our different university institutions with different generations, so that can be reached with other perspective and set up relations with other sciences, tending to interdisciplinarity at educational level. So we don't have to fear to dare. Also, when we have dealing with resources, many in the past dared. Another fundamental point is the care for the academic community, because in it should circulate a charismatic empowerment, because its research for truth must be found on the Redere Deum, on the conjugation of sanctity and competences, because we have to operate in a synodal, synergic way, implementing the encountering, because by encountering we could intuitively understand what is beyond the charisma that comes from person, not human beings, men or women, and open up to new charism and pedagogical humanism. By carrying the academic community, special attention must be given to the technicians, because they could share the sense of the missions of the educating, because each service becomes formation and education. Once again, we have to give attention to the academics, to give a sense of unity, of belonging, and the standardization from the study and research, so that we can have convergent studies with attentive understanding of the history, and also within a more broader picture, so that a person can skip and go have a broader vision. We have to stop, we have to beat on people. So we have to put an accent on women, and as a perspective and a cure, not only for the identity in a genuine reciprocity, therefore accept to the current anthropological challenges, and thinking in this perspective of the gender challenges. The classical anthropological conception, classical humanism, today is not shared as a share bridge. Maybe the Salesian pedagogy humanist can be feel like being a slogan, and that should be thematized. In discussing this humanism, a confrontation dialogue must be also undertaken with new knowledge that are not only challenges but also opportunity. And we have to be challenged by different anthropological vision, humbly knocking on the door of those who can enlighten us, as we did it in the research on Mary and in the conference on Mary and education of Jesus Christ and Christians. In this conference, the attention of the polyhedron of anthropology must be open to 380 degrees, without fears and also without naivety, with discernment that comes from the reasonableness, wisdom that light of the gospel expands and makes proportional with God's plan. And we already have an example in the monotematic dossier. We didn't have the competence. We asked for competent people, so we go through the same path, because this is a possibility in order to have an educational service for new generation as they deserve it, because they are the ones who are more vulnerable, and we have to take into account the challenges for the human. Therefore, we have to have a new Areopagus also for the procedures, for the path, for the budgets. So then we have to aim at what is beyond. Now it's a Congress. We hope to think for a future Congress, so that we can offer future generation the richness of the charisma, and so that everything can be shared with all those professors who want to share the education Salesian experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Sorry, it was to be summarized. Unfortunately, we had to be short, so thank you anyhow. Okay, they are informing us that we can keep on talking till 7:15 with a question and answer session. We only have maybe one question here. If you have much more questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I would like to read the first question, then we will see if there are any questions from the assembly, from the audience. Question to question for Sister Vera. Question: according to you, which are the most important challenges that today's culture set for the survival of preventive system?
Very easy this question. Thanks God, Sor Vera. Then such challenges, we will discover them by going on in the second part of our conference, because we'll hinge on these challenges, on these. Then we will, in the end, if we will not receive any answer, then we will go back to this question. Thank you.
Exactly right. Any more questions? Some other questions, please? Since I'm here, it's not really a question, but I believe that in this atmosphere, it's proper to do so. We have already listened to many questions in the morning and also in the afternoon. We have listened to many interesting things regarding not just the preventive system, but also education as a whole. The main issue, the core issue, let's say, which is education. So I believe that it's one of the strongest challenges, the most important challenges, and it's a very hot topic. It's an open yard with works in progress. Also, the General Chapter has to reopen this chapter to rediscuss it and rethink on how we talk about mutuality, reciprocity in the current situation where we have many fears, because we are indeed seeing some ideologies that could create a contrast among us instead of a debate. I believe that reciprocity is a neutral issue in the sense that it's just not regarding the differences between female and male genders, but it goes beyond the gender issue, but it's the core of our Christian anthropology, but also the main nucleus of preventive system, because educational relationship should be a reciprocal one also. And so the question is, which still remains open, is that we should receive and keep on receiving some inputs helping us to start a debate, a more detailed debate on this issue, a more concrete debate on these issues, the possibility of outlining some educational paths while redesigning our educational models and systems. This is why I said it's an open yard with works in progress, but still to be kept open for discussion. Any more questions? Anyhow, okay.
Just a joke. One of the elements is emerging, for example, in the anthropology field, Christian anthropology, is the fact that the theological sciences were confronted with philosophy, with the classical knowledge. We never confronted ourselves with sciences, with nature science, physics. biology, because by talking about he's an astrophysics that studied theology. We are scared of all these exact sciences, the nature sciences, because it seems that we are limiting the field. But actually, getting deeper in these sciences, maybe we find more answers from this experience of anthropology that keep on insisting at the philosophical, ideological level. Because at philosophical level, ideologies are following one another, then they're regenerating themselves, kick off one after the other, and maybe being humble by confronting ourselves with the science, exact science, we cannot speak freely. We cannot say, labeling myself as X. I'm Farina. I cannot say I'm somebody else. Therefore, the last book that I have to so I cannot say forester female or male forester. Means that I have to put an asterisk to put on the forester, because it's really ridiculous. It's an exasperation of the language. So maybe we should talk less, because everybody otherwise can insert our ideologies. So theologists, they do not know much of science and the sciences. So when we are developing evangelic anthropology, we run the risk of falling then in some categories. Maybe this is a new topic for a new Congress, and that maybe this could be a new direction that can be there. Yes, I was thinking how research... Yeah, thank you. It's on the mic. How the neuroscience research can help us to how we work. So we're not only talking by contrast, female, male, and human beings, but within a time, within a space, being impacted by conditions. So it's a great idea. So it's a great intuition, I think, was to opt for this afternoon, opt for concrete people, 6 exemplary life, 6 profiles, and then consideration with the theories. So then we can spot some paradoxes. For example, in Salesian pedagogy, there are some paradoxes. When we are talking much and on the integrality of education, it was a sign that this integrality was actually lacking. So when we were used to educate FMA and Salesians separately, you female, you males, we were talking about the one preventive system. Now we are talking about differentiating, but we educate them together. These are history paradoxes that complicate our bit of life, because history has some effects on our interpretations. Don't you agree? So the generations already feel what was a conquest of modern subjectivity. It is a kind of postmodern interpretation. So we have to focus on concrete persons. I like very much of these 6 biographies. Maybe you can tell me if you agree or not, do not agree. Each of them has its own original feature, but each of them dedicated attention to the poor, was not talking about poor, was living with them, living with the poor. And so, in a certain way, we are used to it in our preventive system. But in my opinion, two variables were important. First is traits of 6 personalities that were entrepreneurial, forward-looking, have perseverance, and convinced. So they did know how to defend themselves, and they feel it as vocations, as God's will. But they were enabled to be forward-looking. We risk very much. Each of us implements 5 different roles. So we run the risk of being superficial instead of being persistent, forward-looking, and constant. So this era that call once again the persistency, the perseverant. We wouldn't be monarchs, but innerly, Valdocco, Torino, environments are developed. Another second aspect is important, is the work with the institutions. By saying working online and network is, yes, it's the first part of the sentence. In a network that is built around people. So it's not enough to draw a project. Therefore, it is good that we have to interact with weavers in a certain way. So I don't know if I grasped something else. Yes, great. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Sometimes I thought you are in the field of methodologies, also processes of projects of the journals. We have some processes that are shaped according to classical models. How a new historical subject, the new generations, how do they learn? It's extremely different from how we did learn. For the development of new contents, the same evangelical message is how can we propose it once again? Scripts and God words, of course, they are always resounding, but there are some dynamism that are triggered in new generations, and if we are not attentive, we cannot enhance them. Instead, they show a new sensibility, a new sensitiveness that can show new paths, also at vocational training. So we have a scheme in our head of vocational training. Maybe we have to draw them differently, the self-understanding, the process to get to transcendency. They are much, much different compared to the education we had, the traditional and Christian education we had. The same thing that we have in our institutes, people who have life experiences. Of course, we could have never thought in the past of such a thing. So which are the concrete processes? So they could not be the ones we experiences, even if we were happy and then at the beginning we feel like like in a prison, and then we turn out to be FMA and then go to the missions. So these are the largest, broadest challenges that we have to commit. But we take the floor, and the floor should be to the assembly, to the audience. I wanted to thank. Yes, now it's great. It's wonderful that we can hear the word thanking, because we experienced a day that was very much articulated. We have been we said it yesterday, we kept on repeating this morning, so it's not a typical Congress day, because we wanted to sum up in this first session the lived experience. But how can we sum up an experience that is 150 years long? But just to have an idea, but an idea can turn out to be an abstract thing without the contents of the people really lived such an experience. We had a kind of the tip of the iceberg to have these 6 profiles. For example, we have other also profiles on the network, on the website, that are people from Africa. But to have lived experience important from educational institutes, it's important to understand how we taught, how we formed in the past. About for such a short time, we couldn't dwell much upon. Therefore, this day will be reconsidered, and from the statistical data from this morning, we understood that we have new parts of research that are very much disciplinaries that can intercept so many different research studies. History without statistics cannot be done. At the same time, without educational history, history of women as the general history, history of church, psychology, pedagogy, and without each figure, behind each figure, there is a context that is changing, and therefore it is important reading each figure and reality within a context. The book of the photos was a way to mirror such different contexts, the unit of a charisma that has thousands of faces and facets, because and you keep on having them because it's a dynamic element. So thank you very much. To sum up this day, that per se was extremely articulated.